Alright guys, welcome back to another Python programming tutorial, and today we are going to be talking about functions in Python. We are going to talk about some standard practices when it comes to functions and how to use parameters. So by the end of this video, my goal is that you would understand all three of those things. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So all a function is essentially a way to store smaller programs inside of your larger script. Think of them like little blocks of code that are stored by using a key name. So let me go ahead and show you an example. Whenever you create a function, you're always going to use the word or the term def, which means define. Afterwards, you're going to go ahead and type in whatever you want your function to be. Typically, the first function I'll ever make is a main function. I'll go ahead and zoom in here so you guys can see. After that, you're going to need two parentheses. These are going to be the parameters, which we'll talk about later. Currently, the function has no parameters, and then I'm going to use a colon here to denote that I'm done with that. Now, very important here, everything that goes underneath the function needs to be indented. Python is an indentation-based language, meaning that if I don't indent my code correctly, I run into issues. And as you can see, my IntelliSense here is kind of upset. It's like, what is going on? Why isn't this indented correctly? Right? So to fix this, very easy. You're just going to go ahead and click tab. And as you can see, that goes ahead and indents that for me. All right, so let's go ahead and see how this works. So for example, instead of calling this main, I could call this greeting. Okay, and then it can go greeting. It is nice to meet you. So there you go. There's the very first example of a function. Essentially anything under here, right? Whatever I have here can go on for lines and lines and lines of code, but we'll just keep it nice and simple here. And then remember, you do need to indent this in order for Python to know that this is a part of this function. Now let's go ahead and look at the idea of a function call. Whenever I create a function, I haven't told that function to run yet. It's just sitting there, kind of waiting, right? So the next thing after I create a function is I generally need to call that function in order for it to run. So let's go ahead and look here. So I'm just going to type in now the function's name, which is greeting. Boom, followed by the two parentheses, just like that. This tells Python to run what is ever stored in this function, which is the greeting. Let's go ahead and look at this now. When I go ahead and click run, you'll see it's going to print greetings, or greetings. It is nice to meet you. And that essentially is the bare bones basics behind functions. Functions are blocks of code that have been given names and can be reused. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at now some practical examples of functions. First things first, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's always a good idea to have your program run through what's known as a main function. This is because anybody that's a programmer is going to know that that is where your application runs. And even REPL here has named this main.py for a reason, because if you had other Python scripts, for example, I could come here and create other ones, right? You would know that the vast majority of my program is running through this main.py file. And that's a really, really important distinction. So here is generally where you're going to call all your functions into is a main function. So let's go ahead and create a function now, and let's call it add. So as this implies, this is going to add two numbers. Let's create a num1 here, call num1 10, let's call num2 20, and let's go ahead and print the sum of these two numbers are colon space str and then num1 plus num2. Okay, so nice little standard just addition here. Given two numbers, it's going to go ahead and print these two numbers. So let's go ahead and look at how this works. I've now created a add function, which adds two numbers together, and then I have a main function. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and call that add function into my main function. This is because if I have multiple functions, not just the one add function, I know the order in which everything's happening here in my main function. Then the idea is that after you've done all your programming, all you will call at the end of your script is main. And this is done for organization's sake. Because now, if your code looks like this, you know that everything in your main function is what's running, and these are accessory functions which can help you. This right here is also known as a function inside of a function, where I'm calling this inside of this. So also just keep that in mind, and then these are obviously function calls. So let's go ahead and run this now, and as you will see, it's going to go ahead and add these two numbers together, adds these together, changes them to a string, concatenates, and we get 30. So this is, again, some nice standard practice here is naming a main function where all of your program is going to run, and then only calling that function is a nice practice. All right, last part of this video, let's go ahead and look at the idea of a parameter. So a parameter is something that you can pass into the function which serves as a variable. So let's go ahead and look at this. So instead of having num1 and num2 here, let's go ahead and pass those into the parentheses here as num1, num2. Now, whenever I run my main or my add function here, I want to declare what these values are. These are variables that can actually be used inside of my function, as you can see here. But generally speaking, you want to init them whenever the function is called. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and create 30 and 50. So now I know that this function is going to add these two numbers together and print the sum. So let's go ahead and look at this. This is the idea of a parameter, where this is going to take two numbers, or two integers in this case, right here. And those integers values are set right here. Okay, let's go ahead and run this, and I will get 80. And as you can see, I get 80 here. Now, last thing you want to do here is let's pretend that I forget to do that part. Let's say I forget to put the numbers through here. Watch what happens here. I'm going to go ahead and run this program, and I get an error. That's because these now have the value of none, which means non-existence in Python. And when you try and add two things that are non-existent together, your program is very sad. So what you can actually do is you can init these inside here. So if I say num1 is equal to 0, and num2, let's say, is equal to 10, I've created essentially base cases for what I want these numbers to be equal to. So that way, if in some reason I don't pass what this is supposed to be, it's now going to say the sum of these numbers is 0. And as you can see, it does that. But if I want to add this, and I want to pass parameters just like I did before, I can also do that as well, and it will overwrite the values that I put here. I'm going to go ahead and run now, and you'll see it overwrote those values. So again, this is a nice example of how you can organize your code and use your code effectively. Right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and look at an example of, let's say, a calculator in Python. So I'm just going to do a simple one that just adds two numbers together. So it's just going to ask the user for two numbers, and it's going to add those numbers together, and it's going to use a function call to accomplish this. So I'm going to go ahead and create an add function. I'm also going to define a get two numbers function. Or how about get numbers? Get a number. Let's do get a number. Get a number. Okay, whoops. Cool. All right, so I created a get a number function and an add function, as you can see here. So when I want to get a number, I'm going to go ahead and prompt the user. I'm going to ask the user, so number. I'm going to set this equal to input. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and ask the user for a number. Please give me a number. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and do our try except. So try to make that number. We'll say integer. We'll assume all numbers are integers, although we know we don't. That's not the case. But we'll just pretend for this one problem that all numbers are integers. That's okay. Anyway, so we're going to try and make this number that they gave us into an integer. And I'm going to go ahead and say number here. That's equal to that. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and do except here, colon. And then here, I'm going to say not a number. Please try again. Okay. Boom. And then if this goes through, so it's going to try this. If it goes through, I'm going to return this number. Okay. Then if it's not a number, what I'm actually going to do here, and this is a cool little trick here that you can do, it's called recursion. This is more of an advanced concept, but why don't I go ahead and show it here. I can actually call the function get a number inside of itself. This is called recursion. So I can come here and I can do a recursion. So what happens here is if it fails, it's going to print not a number, please try again, and then it's going to ask for a new number. And then when it passes, it's going to go ahead and return the number. So it's only going to return a number once this has successfully gone through its iterations here, right? So what I'm going to go ahead and do is come here and have a number 1 and set that equal to get a number. Okay, then I'm going to have a number 2 here. Boom, set that equal to get a number. Boom, and then here I'm going to pass number 1 and number 2. Okay, and then it's going to add those. So again, this is a good example of why having that main function is important. If I ever need to debug code, I know this is where all the function calls are happening. And then here, if I wanted to check something out, I can always check things out, and everything is very nice and neatly organized, and this is why you should be using functions. And then of course, the only function we are going to call in the actual script is our main function. This is generally how you want to organize things. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to go ahead and run here. And it's going to go ahead and say, please give me a number. I probably should have added a colon and a period there, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give it 10. Boom, give it another number. Let's say I make a mistake and give it W. It's going to ask for another number. Now I'm going to do 20. Let's see here. Try that one more time. Go, so I'll do 10 here. Let's say I do 20 now. And as you see, I get my 50 back. So I think there might have been a little issue here with the recursion, but that's okay. You don't have to worry about that. But anyways, that is the basic concepts behind function calls, and parameters. I hope this helped you guys, and I hope this was informative. Trust me, this is one of the most important concepts that you will use in programming, so please take some time to organize your code like I showed you. Again, having functions here that perform specific actions, and then a main function that calls everything. Alright, without further ado, that's pretty much it for this video. If this video helped you at all, please drop a comment, like the video, and subscribe. We post a lot of coding, game development stuff all the time, so yeah, and I'll see you all in the next one.